In the early 1700s, across the vast and dangerous waters of the Atlantic, one name carried more fear than a storm on the horizon: Blackbeard. To merchant sailors and colonial governors alike, he was a phantom, part man, part myth. A towering figure draped in black, with smoldering fuses twisted into his tangled beard, eyes said to glow like burning coals. His ship, Queen Anne's Revenge, was a floating fortress. A captured French warship, bristling with 40 cannons, and a crew of outlaws loyal not to a country, but to fear itself. Witnesses claimed that when he approached, fog followed. That birds fled the sky. That his very presence froze crews in place before the first shot was ever fired. But behind the tales and the terror, who was Edward Teach? Was he truly the ruthless monster history remembers? Or something far more clever? A master manipulator who understood that fear was his greatest weapon? In this documentary, we'll peel back the legend. We'll explore how a relatively unknown sailor became the most infamous pirate of all time. A man who didn't just chase gold, he chased immortality. This is the untold story of Blackbeard. Between the 1650s and the 1730s, a wild era unfolded on the oceans, what we now call the Golden Age of piracy. Picture this: European empires expanding, merchant ships loaded with silver, spice, and slaves crisscrossing the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, ripe targets for those brave, or desperate, enough to seize them. Wars like the Spanish Succession had just ended. Thousands of skilled sailors, many from the British Navy, found themselves unemployed. With a seafaring life and little to lose, many turned pirate by choice or by force. Add to that weak colonial governments stretched thin across the globe, unable to patrol every sea route or island haven. Pirates thrived in hidden coves and ports like Nassau in the Bahamas, a self-governing pirate republic where rough democracy and pirate codes ruled. These weren't just cutthroat criminals. They formed crews under their own codes, dividing loot, punishing rule-breakers, even funding surgeon care for injured mates, all in the name of survival and loyalty. Ships varied too, from nimble sloops perfect for ambushing merchant vessels, to fearsome warships like Blackbeard's 300-person, 40-cannon Queen Anne's Revenge. By 1715 and into the early 1720s, piracy peaked. 4,000 pirates roamed the seas, disrupting the booming trade routes of sugar, rum, slaves, and gold. In short, lawlessness, war, and colonial chaos carved the perfect storm, and from it, legends like Blackbeard emerged, not as anomalies, but as symbols of a world gone rogue. Before he became the most feared pirate of his time, Blackbeard was simply Edward Teach, or perhaps Thatch. The records aren't clear. What we think we know is that he was born around 1680, in the bustling English port city of Bristol, a place brimming with ships, trade, and opportunity. Not just a rough dock town, but a gateway to the world, and a breeding ground for sailors. It's likely that Teach came from a relatively well-off family. He could read and write, a rare skill among pirates. He wasn't just a brute. He was clever, educated, and dangerously strategic. Like many young men of his time, he turned to the sea early, but not as a pirate, not yet. He became a privateer, essentially a government-approved pirate. During the War of the Spanish Succession, England and its allies issued thousands of letters of marque, legal documents that allowed private sailors to raid enemy ships in the name of the crown. And for a while, it worked. Teach fought against French and Spanish targets in the Caribbean and the American colonies, learning the trade of naval combat, survival, and, most importantly, how to seize ships. But when the war ended in 1714, so did the legality. Thousands of privateers were left stranded, armed, experienced, and unemployed. Their only skill? Capturing ships. Their only loyalty? To gold. So, the line between privateer and pirate? It blurred. And Teach stepped across it. By 1716, he had joined forces with Captain Benjamin Hornigold, a notorious pirate operating out of New Providence, in the Bahamas, then known as the Pirates' Republic. Teach rose quickly through the ranks. Within a year, he'd earned command of his own vessel and a fearsome reputation. But it wasn't just about firepower, it was about theater. Teach didn't just become a pirate, he performed it. He twisted burning slow matches into his thick black beard, so smoke would rise from his face like a demon from hell. He carried multiple pistols, daggers, and cutlasses, all visible, to intimidate before a single shot was fired. His defining moment came in November 1717, when he captured a massive French slave ship off the island of Martinique. He renamed it the Queen Anne's Revenge, outfitted it with 40 guns, and transformed it into a floating symbol of fear. From that point on, Edward Teach ceased to exist. He became Blackbeard. And what set him apart wasn't cruelty, he wasn't known for killing hostages. It was psychology. His weapon wasn't blood. It was terror. Edward Teach wasn't born a legend. He earned it, One cannon, one raid, and one terrifying glance at a time. In the pirate haven of New Providence, 1716, Teach was a rising star in the crew of Benjamin Hornigold, one of the most feared pirates of the time. Hornigold, a seasoned ex-privateer, was building a fleet, and he saw something in Teach, not just skill, but command presence. Within months, Teach was given his own vessel, a fast sloop, and began conducting raids side by side with Hornigold across the Bahamas and up the American coastline. But when Hornigold retired from piracy in late 1717, accepting a royal pardon, Teach made his move. No longer a lieutenant. He would now strike out on his own. And the timing? Perfect. That same year, just off the coast of Martinique, Teach encountered a massive French slave ship named La Concorde. It was a monster, over 200 tons, carrying 400+ enslaved Africans, and 16 cannons. But the crew was sick, demoralized, and unprepared for a pirate assault. Teach took it with barely a fight. But instead of looting and burning, he transformed the ship. He fitted her with 40 guns, renamed her the Queen Anne's Revenge, and turned her into a war machine, one of the most formidable pirate ships ever to sail the Atlantic. And that's when the myth began. Edward Teach didn't just want riches, he wanted control. He built a character. Blackbeard, braided and tied with black ribbons. A leather baldric across his chest carrying 3, 4, even 6 pistols. Cutlasses strapped to both sides. But the real terror? He lit slow-burning cannon fuses and tucked them under his hat and into his beard. When he boarded a ship, smoke curled from his face like a man possessed by fire. Witnesses claimed he looked like the devil himself, a ghost from hell with gunpowder in his eyes. But here's the twist, he rarely killed. Blackbeard understood something most pirates didn't, that fear was more powerful than blood. He didn't need to fire, because by the time he approached, most ships were already surrendering. His image was his weapon. And in just 1 year, he went from second in command, to the most feared pirate in the world. In May of 1718, Blackbeard took piracy from the shadows of the Caribbean and planted it squarely on the front page of every colonial paper. He didn't just attack ships. He waged a siege on one of the most important port cities in the American colonies. Charleston, South Carolina wasn't just a southern city. It was a gateway of trade, one of the busiest ports on the Atlantic coast. And when Blackbeard sailed in with his small fleet, he did the unthinkable. He blockaded the harbor. Not for an hour. Not for a day. For nearly a full week. With 4 ships, including his mighty Queen Anne's Revenge, he seized the harbor entrance and captured 9 vessels, taking their crews and passengers hostage. Among them was Samuel Wragg, a wealthy merchant and member of the colony's governing council. His demand? Not gold. Not silver. Medicine. Specifically, a chest of rare treatments, mercury, likely needed to treat syphilis or dysentery spreading among his crew. Blackbeard knew disease, not battle, was the true enemy at sea. The people of Charleston were paralyzed. For days, they begged the governor to act. The city's militia was helpless, the harbor was choked, and all the while, Blackbeard's ship sat silent, looming like sharks circling their prey. Eventually, the ransom was paid. The medicine delivered. The hostages returned. No blood. No fires. Just pure domination. And that, more than anything, was Blackbeard's genius. He didn't rely on cannonballs, he weaponized fear. You see, Blackbeard understood something that made him far more dangerous than any pirate of his age. Violence is messy. But fear? Fear does the work for you. His look was engineered for psychological warfare. A towering figure, Blackbeard braided with red ribbons, 6 pistols slung across his chest, and most famously, slow-burning cannon fuses tucked into his hat, billowing smoke like he was born of hellfire. To many sailors, he didn't appear human. He was a myth walking on water. Some reports say Blackbeard would prepare for battle like a stage actor, ordering his men to scream wildly, fire muskets into the air, even beat swords against the deck to amplify chaos. It wasn't about overwhelming force, it was about overwhelming imagination. Why fight, when you can terrify your enemies into surrendering? And it worked. Again and again, ships would strike their colors without a shot fired. This is why many historians now argue that Blackbeard, despite his legendary status as a savage, killed remarkably few people. In fact, in all the verified records of his piracy, there are only a handful of known deaths attributed to him. Most of his victims lived. Shaken, plundered, but alive. But the legend said otherwise. Colonial governors branded him a monster. Newspapers described him as a beast. Even decades after his death, stories still claimed he made pacts with the devil, or that his headless body swam around his ship 3 times after execution. Myth grew where facts were scarce, and Blackbeard knew that. He fed the legend, because legends are harder to kill. By blockading Charleston, Blackbeard didn't just make history. He declared himself an empire of one. A pirate with no nation. A general with no army. A storm that needed no thunder. And with that single act, he cemented a reputation not just as a thief of gold, but as a thief of fear itself. We've seen the pirate life on screen, rum-soaked adventures, buried treasure, parrots on shoulders, and swashbuckling duels under tropical suns. But what was it really like, aboard a ship like Queen Anne's Revenge? The truth? It was loud, filthy, and smelled of gunpowder, sweat, and rot. Blackbeard's crew may have been infamous, but they weren't mindless cutthroats. They lived by a code, literally. Most pirate ships, including Blackbeard's, followed what were known as Articles of Agreement, early, handwritten pirate constitutions. These weren't just rules of plunder. They laid out voting rights, equal shares of loot, even compensation for injuries. Lose a leg in battle? You might get 500 pieces of 8. It was a system where every man had a voice, at least, more than he'd ever have on a Navy ship. Captains were often elected, and could be deposed if the crew lost confidence. That included Blackbeard. Yes, he was feared. But he also had to command respect, or risk a mutiny. Daily life was brutal. The food was awful: salted pork, dry biscuits crawling with weevils, and stale beer or watered-down rum. Sanitation? Non-existent. Disease ran rampant. And sleep came in shifts, often in cramped hammocks or on open decks, under stars or storms. But there was also freedom, a rare thing in the 18th century. Many pirates were former sailors, indentured servants, or enslaved Africans who chose this dangerous life over servitude. On a pirate ship, it didn't matter where you were born or what your skin looked like. What mattered was loyalty, bravery, and skill. And yet, for all the talk of treasure, here's a truth that disappoints Hollywood. Blackbeard likely never buried treasure. In fact, most pirates didn't. Gold was too useful to bury. Pirates spent their loot fast, on women, weapons, drink, or repairs. The famous idea of a map with an X? Pure invention. It comes from Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, published over a century after Blackbeard died. Same goes for the parrots, peg legs, and eye patches. All part of a romantic image, built for books, and later for Hollywood. Even the phrase, "R," has no historical evidence. That accent? It came from an actor in the 1950 film Treasure Island, who happened to be from Cornwall. The truth is, Blackbeard didn't talk like a pirate. He talked like an Englishman. Because he was one. But myth has its power. Over time, the real lives of pirates, harsh, short, and chaotic, have been repackaged into tales of adventure and freedom. And perhaps, that's part of Blackbeard's immortality. He didn't just sail through history. He sailed straight into legend. By 1718, Blackbeard had become more than a pirate. He was a problem of politics, a phantom whose presence disrupted shipping, scared merchants, and embarrassed colonial governors. But even legends grow tired. After his infamous blockade of Charleston and months of raiding, Blackbeard sailed north, to the more quiet, marshy coastlines of North Carolina. Here, something unexpected happened. He tried to retire. North Carolina's governor, Charles Eden, granted him a royal pardon, under the King's 1717 Act of Grace, which promised forgiveness to any pirate willing to give up the life. On paper, Blackbeard was a free man. But behind the scenes, he wasn't done. Rumors swirled of secret meetings, bribes, and quiet deals between Blackbeard and Governor Eden himself. Some say Blackbeard offered him a cut of his loot in exchange for protection. Others claim Eden turned a blind eye, allowing Blackbeard to anchor in hidden inlets and operate under the radar, all while pretending to live peacefully. Either way, someone noticed. Alexander Spotswood, governor of Virginia, saw the danger clearly. He wasn't interested in pardons. He wanted results. Without permission from North Carolina, or even from his own superiors in London, Spotswood sent a kill order. A small detachment of British sailors was dispatched, led by a tough, no-nonsense lieutenant, Robert Maynard. Maynard knew he was outgunned, so he planned for stealth. On the morning of November 22, 1718, Maynard cornered Blackbeard in a quiet channel near Ocracoke Island. What followed was less a naval battle and more a knife fight on a raft. Blackbeard's ship fired the opening volley, shredding Maynard's men. But Maynard had laid a trap. He kept most of his men hidden below deck. When Blackbeard and his crew boarded, they were ambushed by a wave of armed sailors bursting from the hold. The two forces clashed in brutal, close combat, cutlasses, pistols, muskets fired point blank. Blackbeard fought like a man possessed. Witnesses claimed he was shot 5 times, stabbed over 20, and yet kept fighting. It took a final blow to the neck to bring him down. When the smoke cleared, Maynard stood among the dead. And Blackbeard was gone. To send a message, his severed head was hung from the bowsprit of Maynard's ship. His body? Tossed overboard. Legend says it swam around the ship 3 times before sinking, a final, eerie act of defiance. But Blackbeard's death raised a bigger question. Had the Empire truly slain a villain? Or just buried a man it couldn't control? November 22, 1718. The waters near Ocracoke Island were quiet, until they exploded with cannon fire. In the grey dawn mist, Blackbeard faced his final enemy, Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy. Outnumbered, outgunned, and with no wind in his sails, Blackbeard could have fled. But he didn't. He stood his ground. Maynard's ship looked nearly empty. But it was a trap. His men were hiding below deck. When Blackbeard boarded to deliver the final blow, the trap was sprung. From the belly of the ship, British sailors burst out with cutlasses and pistols, turning the decks into a blood-soaked battleground. Blackbeard fought like a demon. He was shot 5 times. Stabbed over 20. Yet he kept fighting, swinging his blade with savage fury. Until one final slash, across the neck, brought the pirate legend to his knees. But even in death, he made a statement. Maynard severed Blackbeard's head and hung it from the bowsprit of his ship like a trophy. His body was thrown overboard. And legend says, it swam around the ship 3 times before sinking. Was it just a sailor's tale? Or something darker? Some say Blackbeard wasn't just killed. He was silenced. Silenced by the colonial powers he once outsmarted. Silenced, because a free man who couldn't be bought, was more dangerous than a criminal. His death marked the end of the golden age of piracy, but the beginning of a legend that would never die. Blackbeard is long gone, but his shadow hasn't faded. In fact, in many ways, he's more alive now than he ever was. His name echoes in tales of buried treasure, ghost ships, and hidden coves. Did he hide gold? No treasure has ever been officially found, and most historians agree he probably didn't. Pirates rarely buried treasure, they spent it. Fast. But the mystery persists. Just like the rumor that Blackbeard was married, maybe once, maybe 14 times. Some say he took a young bride in North Carolina. Others believe it was all part of his psychological warfare, to appear larger than life. And maybe, that's what he really wanted. Not just gold. Not just power. Legacy. The man born as Edward Teach, or possibly Thatch, crafted his own myth like a playwright designs a villain. The beard, the smoke, the silence before the storm. It was performance art, with blood. And his performance didn't end with death. Today, Blackbeard appears everywhere, from blockbuster films like Pirates of the Caribbean, to video games like Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag. His image has inspired Halloween costumes, novels, comic books, and even the names of roller coasters. But sometimes, fiction isn't far from truth. In 1996, divers off the coast of North Carolina discovered a shipwreck believed to be the Queen Anne's Revenge, Blackbeard's infamous flagship. Over 300,000 artifacts have since been recovered: cannons, swords, surgical tools, even tiny gold flakes embedded in the wood. A floating museum of Blackbeard's reality, buried beneath centuries of sand. But for every answer we've uncovered, new questions rise. Who was the real man? Was he a merciless killer, or a clever tactician? A savage, or a showman? A demon of the seas? Or just a desperate man surviving in desperate times? One thing is certain. Blackbeard is dead, or is he? Because the man may be gone, but his legend still sails through time, through storm, through story. If you've made it this far, then you, too, are part of the legend now. But tell us, what do you believe? Was Blackbeard a genius? A monster? Or something in between? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you love true tales that feel stranger than fiction. And don't forget to subscribe, because next time, we'll dive into the dark waters of another pirate who rewrote the rules of the world's oceans. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon, and beware the sails in the mist.